Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us on this first Sunday in April. Here's a little history for you. Iron ore was first discovered on the Marquette Iron Range in 1844 in Negaunee. The discovery was made by a group of surveyors led by William Austin Burt, who discovered their magnetic compasses produced skewed results because of the concentration of iron in the land. They were surveying. Mining began in 1847. There have been temporary shutdowns and labor stoppages, but mining has been part of the fabric and culture of this region ever since. But jump forward to today. The steel and iron ore industries have been going through some difficult times, and the impact is being felt here in Upper Michigan. What will the future hold? We talked about that with the chairman of Cliffs Natural Resources, and I'll share that conversation with you starting right now.
From TV6, this is the Ryan Report. Now, here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, those early iron mines back in the 1850s were operated by the Cleveland Mining Company and the Iron Cliffs Company, which became the Cleveland Cliffs Iron Company and is now Cliffs Natural Resources. The person responsible for leading the company today is Lorenzo Gonzales, the chairman, president, and CEO. Mr. Gonzales took the reins in August of 2014 after a shareholder proxy fight replaced the company's former board of directors. Gonzales is a native of Brazil, has extensive global and U.S. experience in metals and mining, and while one of his predecessors at Cliffs had attempted to expand the company's global reach in iron ore and coal, since joining Cliffs, Gonzales has implemented a new strategy to refocus the company as a supplier of iron ore pellets to the U.S. steel industry. Iron mines here don't operate in a vacuum. Their viability depends on U.S. steelmakers as well as developments in the global iron and steel industries. We talked with Gonzales about global industry issues, but our first concern was the immediate outlook for the mines here in Upper Michigan. One of my questions concerned the Empire Mine. I said there have been rumblings for a number of years about the mine's closing, but now it appears to be more certain. This was his response.
Yeah, I can't speak of the rumblings over the years, but what I can tell is that we are shutting down the Empire Mine by the end of this year. So unfortunately, very soon we will start the process of winding down the operations, and the warn notice will be distributed to the employees in the next months or so.
You did say that you had told the governor that you may kind of hold the Empire in some kind of capacity where some of the facilities could be used if needed in the future?
Yes, sir. We are going to shut down Empire as is, keep Empire as an in a status that we call indefinite idle, with no hopes of exploring the ore that is no longer economical for us over there, but keeping the pellet plant and the capability of producing pellets in standby mode in a way that if in the future we need the pellet plant to complement our capabilities out of Tilden, we can use Tilden ore to produce pellets at Empire. But that's just a standby situation. It's not something that will be operational in the near future.
Well, based on present employment levels, the company is predicting that 400 jobs will be affected by the closing of the Empire Mine. The impact on the area will be much greater when other jobs in the community that will be affected are considered. The closure of Empire leaves one remaining iron mine operating here. I asked Gonzales about the future outlook for the Tilden Mine.
We have a bright future ahead of us. Tilden has several decades of ore on the ground. It's a high quality material, very competent workforce, extremely good management, and clients that are bulletproof. So we have the raw material, we have the operational capability, we have the cost control, and we have the market. So we're in good shape.
As I said a few moments ago, the mines here are affected by global issues in iron and steel. The Cliffs CEO has spoken out very strongly against the role that two of the industry's major mining companies have played in what he believes is a failed strategy that has negatively impacted the iron ore industry.
The two biggest Australian miners, BHP and Rio Tinto, they stated several times during 2014 and 2015 that their strategy was designed to take other companies out of business. And it was based on overproducing, oversupplying the Chinese market, knowing that by doing so, they would be knocking down iron ore prices and steel prices. And they believed that they could afford. Several arrogant statements coming from both BHP and Rio Tinto saying that they could continue to do that because the cost structure was bulletproof. They would keep their dividends no matter what, and others were hanging by their fingernails to stay afloat, things like that. I was a vocal opponent of that strategy, not the only one, but the only one that really put his voice out here in the United States. The other one was an Australian friend of mine, the chairman of Fortescue, Andrew Forrest, with the same type of speech and the same type of attitude. And we are vindicated when, number one, BHP cut the dividend. Number two, Rio Tinto cut the dividend. Number three, Jimmy Wilson, the mastermind of the strategy of self-destruction within BHP, was let go late last year. And finally, with Sam Walsh, the one that in the last Cliffs conference call, I said, no one is hanging on by the fingernails to stay in business, but some executives are hanging by their fingernails on their jobs. I was referring to him. So he has a hobby. He is a collector of milk jugs, and he is back to collecting milk jugs. He no longer has a job with Rio Tinto. That should be very exciting, collecting milk jugs.
Well, clearly the Cliffs chairman doesn't pull any punches when it comes to describing the role that others have played in shaping the future of global iron mining. In his presentation to community leaders in Marquette, Gonzales pointed out that cheap iron ore from Australia and the two companies he named not only directly affected iron mining, but provided the raw material that allowed China to increase steel production and dump much of that output in the United States, which had a major negative impact on U.S. steelmakers. I'll be back to continue our discussion on iron mining in just 2 minutes. Well, this morning we're talking about the outlook for iron mining here with the chairman and CEO of Cliffs Natural Resources, Lorenzo Gonzales. When he took charge at Cliffs, he announced his intention to restructure, to take the company out of coal and non-U.S. iron ore properties. I asked him how he felt he was progressing with that effort.
I think we're 80% done. We still have the Asia Pacific operation, the Australian iron ore mines in place and producing and selling iron ore. But we were also able to knock down the costs over there to a point that we are generating cash flow. So we have U.S. iron ore and Asia Pacific. Everything else is gone. We sold for good cash. The cash was used to pay down debt, and all these things were the goals stated at the time that I took over. So I would say 80% done.
Joseph Carrabbo was appointed chairman and CEO of Cliffs in 2006. As iron ore prices skyrocketed because of growth in China, he set out to expand the company into more global iron ore and coal mining operations. That included the acquisition in 2011 of Thompson Consolidated Iron Mines in Canada for $4.2 billion, including debt. Iron ore prices would eventually drop, bringing that plan into question. I asked Gonzales about the failure of that strategy and how the company was dealing with the large amount of debt they were carrying.
Yes. We are part of that failed assumption that China would grow forever. That's the reason I came to the company. It was not easy. Nobody invited me to come to the company. I had to come through a proxy fight that in 2014, we had a contested shareholders meeting, and my group outnumbered the incumbents that were doing with the Cliffs exactly what Rio Tinto and BHP were doing with themselves, and we shareholders took the company from the hands of the old body and the board and replaced the entire board. So as far as the debt that they imposed in the company, it was 3.6 billion when we took over in August of 2014, and net debt is now more like a little more than $2 billion. So we knocked down a lot of that already, and with prices improving and business conditions in the United States improving, and iron ore prices are stabilizing in the international market, which benefits directly our Australian operation, we should be in a great position to continue to knock down debt.
It's time for a little more history and background, and if you're interested in the outlook for iron mining, this is an important key to the future. Point number one, during its heyday, the United States produced more than half of all the steel in the world. Most of that steel was produced using iron ore, which was fed into a blast furnace as the first step in the steel-making process. While the iron ore pellets produced in the plants here go through a major processing operation to upgrade to a high-grade product, there are no chemical or metallurgical changes. It's still iron ore and must be converted to molten iron in the blast furnace, so it can be used to make steel in a basic oxygen furnace or BOF. Point number two, there's another way to make steel, using what's called an electric arc furnace, or EAF. It's been around for a long time, but for many years it turned out only a small percentage of the steel produced, and usually lower grade products. Electric furnaces basically made steel by melting scrap iron and reprocessing it into new steel. As time passed, the electric furnace steel makers continued to improve their product and to take a larger share of the steel-making market. More steel today is made by the electric furnace operators than in the BOF by the so-called integrated producers. And point number three, and this one is very important to today's discussion, you cannot use traditional iron ore pellets in an electric furnace. That means the amount of steel produced using the type of iron ore pellets here has been significantly reduced. In our discussion with Cliffs CEO, we talked about these changes and then what they mean to Cliffs now and in the future.
Yes, sir. I absolutely believe in that. We are currently initiating our first steps toward serving the EAF side of the business. As you may know, only 35% of the steel-making business in the United States is still under the control of the integrated steel makers. 65% is EAF-based business. So Cliffs in the past was not serving the EAFs. Now we are. We started supplying DR-grade pellets to one of the biggest steel makers, EAF steel makers, and we will continue to develop other projects toward addressing the EAF side of the market.
I pointed out to Gonzales that at one time there had been some discussion about the possibility of producing a product at Empire Mine that could be used in the electric furnace. I asked if that was under any consideration.
Not during the time that I have been with the company. Actually, the iron body here is not the most appropriate to produce DR-grade pellets. One of the main characteristics of DR-grade type of material is low silica. And we have lower silica in Minnesota than here. So the iron bodies and the Mesabi range are a lot better than the iron bodies in the Marquette range for the use of the DR-grade pellets. So we never really, under my watch, we never really considered doing DR-grade material here in Michigan.
One of the reasons the steel industry appears to be making a comeback is the decision by the federal government to institute tariffs on foreign countries, particularly China, which has been dumping major amounts of steel in the U.S. I asked Gonzales if we appear to be making progress in dealing with the import issue.
I believe we have made a lot of progress. I believe that the last preliminary duties imposed on both hot-rolled and cold-rolled steel were encouraging in terms of being high enough to protect against new imports. It's clear that the order books of the clients are improving, And with that, they tend to order more pellets, and our business tends to continue to improve. So we are making progress.
I'll be back with more after we take this break. I had a couple more questions for Cliff's CEO before wrapping up our discussion. The company is still in negotiations with the United Steelworkers Union for a contract that expired last summer. I asked him if some progress could be made soon.
I do. I feel that we're moving in the right direction. I continue to believe and continue to state very clearly that we have a lot more in common than in disagreements with the USW. We actually like cooperating with the USW, and I believe that it only takes a little more of listening to what each other side has to say in a way to get to common ground. But we have several of the sticking points already resolved. We are coming to an end soon, and I'm very hopeful that we'll have a contract in the near future.
In closing, I asked Mr. Gonzales what gives him confidence for the future of the company and the iron mining business.
Because we have been successful, except for the last 4 or 5 years. We're successful 163 years out of 168 years, supply the U.S. steel industry, not supplying iron ore to the world, supplying the U.S. steel industry with iron ore. In the last 5 years, we're trying to be more like everyone else, and that's when we failed. So now we're bringing the company back to basics. I mean, back to supplying the U.S. iron ore industry. If we had recognized that the U.S. steel industry was migrating toward from blast furnace toward electric arc furnace earlier, we would be already supplying the EAFs. We are not, because we had that gap. So we are basically recovering our position over here when we stopped being the supplier of choice of iron ore to the U.S. steel industry. The U.S. steel industry right now is alive and kicking, but it's no longer blast furnace based only. Actually, blast furnaces are only 35% of the business. 65% is EAF. So I'm confident because that thing worked for a long period of time. We are just going back to what we have done so well before. Just recognizing that the face of the clients changed. We no longer can sell flip cell phones, those type of Motorola's that we had in the past. You got to sell smartphones because people don't buy flip phones anymore. We're back selling cell phones. We're not inventing televisions or DVD players or whatever, video games. So you know what I'm saying? So we're back doing what we're doing for a long time and being successful and understanding how the industry is changing. But then you said, you know what? The U.S. is producing steel and iron ore in the United States is not fancy. Let me go do something else because it should be good, because other companies are doing. That was the mistake. Now we're back to what we were doing before. Recognize where the clients are. Who can pay the bill? EAFs. So let's go there. Are we denying the blast furnace? Of course not. We are going to continue to supply them. But we're going to add EAF and grow toward EAF because that's where the business went.
In talking with Mr. Gonzales, it's clear he has very definite views on the iron mining and steel industries and the role his company must play to meet the challenges it faces. He has been successful in moving the company in the direction he believes it should be heading, but there's still more to be done. Only time will tell if that strategy will be the answer for the company's future success and for the future of iron mining in Upper Michigan. I'll be back in just 2 minutes. There's an old sports expression that goes, "That's why they play the game." It generally means you don't always get the outcome you were expecting when teams meet. As we look at some recent basketball results, it's clear that expression doesn't apply to the North Central Jets, who won their second straight state championship. In that case, playing the game just gave them a chance to prove once more that the Jets are a group of outstanding competitors who know what winning is all about. Congratulations to the Jets. And also a tip of the hat to the Stevenson and St. Ignace girls for making it to the state tournament. But why they play the game? That idea was certainly apparent in games that were important to some UP residents. In boys' Class C play, Negaunee went undefeated for the first 19 games, only losing to Iron Mountain in the last game of the season. Negaunee was thought to be the team most likely to head down state in Class C. And if not the Miners, then the Mountaineers. And if not the Mountaineers, perhaps the Ishpeming Hematites, who were frequently in the running. But they played the games, and that's not the way it turned out. When the dust had settled, the Westwood Patriots were heading down state. Westwood finished the season with a losing record, but in the tournaments defeated Ishpeming, who had upset Negaunee, and went on to record victories over Calumet and Norway. The Patriots lost in the quarterfinals of a state tournament, but their victories in the district and regional events once again proved that's why they play the game. Good job, Patriots. Then, of course, there's Michigan State University. The Spartans came into this year's NCAA tournament with high expectations from the team and the fans. Many picked them to be back in the Final Four, and more than a few thought they would win it all. Then they played the game. They played the game, and the second-seeded Spartans trailed for the whole game and lost to 15-seed Middle Tennessee State in the opening round of the tournament. Is there a life lesson we can all learn from this? Obviously, the favorites don't always win, but I think there's more to think about than that. Perhaps the same idea can be applied to other things in life. I don't know about you, but I know there have been times in my life when I thought about trying something new or different or challenging and decided it just wouldn't work out right. The thing is, we will never know unless we try it. We'll never know unless we play the game. I'll be back in 2 minutes. About time for us to wrap it up for another week. I hope you found our discussion this morning about iron mining to be informative. It has been a key element in the economy of the Upper Peninsula for over a century and a half, and now it appears that impact, while still significant, will be getting smaller. At one time, the iron mines in the region employed over 5,000 people. That number now is about 1,150 and expected to be reduced by about 400. Finding new jobs for those workers and new jobs for the region is the big challenge for the future. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you'll plan to be here again next Sunday morning.